Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys a review of Seeing the Elephant by The Offering. So we've listened to this album non-stop throughout the entire week, and I'll kick this off by saying it's really good. Very enjoyable album. And you know, we've covered The Offering before, and I did go listen to Home again just to get a reference point as to what that album sounds like compared to this album, just to see what's up. And this album, this new one, is a lot angrier and more aggressive overall. They're both great. I enjoy them quite a bit, but I think that's one of the main and major differences I kind of find between them is that just Seeing the Elephant's just angry. You have songs like Wasp, you have songs like Rosefire, songs like Flower Children. These are just really punching kind of songs. And while Home had a lot of heavy stuff, just didn't hit the same way. Not to say that's, anything good or anything bad about it. That's just kind of the main distinction I noticed between the albums. So that's interesting. Did I enjoy Seeing the Elephant? Yes, I did. I guess I really have only one criticism or complaint about this album. Only one. And it is something that kind of bugs me, but other than that, it's great. And that is the lyrical content of this album. This album, for the most part, has a consistent theme, but I feel like the way that it's written is not very clever or interesting. For example, the hook of Flower Children is annoying because it's just, we want the boomers dead. Sorry, Ma. We want the boomers dead. We want the boomers dead. Sorry, Paul. Like, you're really... like, I just feel like you could write the same kind of message and make it sound interesting. Case in point, Tiny Disappointments. I feel like goes down the same kind of line thematically, but when you listen to it and read the lyrics, it's actually a lot more thought-provoking. It's not as direct. I feel like when you write stuff like this and make it too direct, you come off as a little bit try-hard. And you had a bit of that complaint when we checked out Of Kingdom and Crown by Machine Head. And the reason I think it's not so much of an issue on that album is because that's a concept album and it has a story. So right. At the very least, there's depth in terms of, there's a message here, but there's also a story to back it, and you can view it in different ways. When you're as direct as this, it's like, okay, I guess that's it. You're hammering me in the face with what this song is about, and you're not giving me the chance to interpret it my own way. And I feel like that's a little bit of an issue. It just kind of bugs me. And I feel like Flower Children is kind of like the biggest issue with it, because every time I hear this hook, I'm just like, really? But
interesting.
That's really my only complaint and criticism about this album. Other than that, it's awesome. And I'll bring Tiny Disappointments up again. One of, if not my favorite song in this album. The emotion, incredible. The performance of this whole album is phenomenal. Just everyone really stepped up to bat, as they did on the last record. And one small thing, I guess no pun intended, about Tiny Disappointments I like, is that when he says, let's pretend I'm okay, he says it in a low register the first two times. Third time, he jumps up an octave and does it. And I think there might be a point later on where both the high and lower octave go together. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. I love that. I love how it develops like that. And that song is just so sad sounding, so melancholy. It's really good as a dichotomy of sound between Flower Children. Because Flower Children is an aggressive song, followed by Tiny Disappointments, pulls it all the way back. And then you have probably my second, I don't know about second favorite, but another one of my favorites, which is With Consent. Really fun song. The grooves are awesome. One thing I kind of find funny is that the lyrics do not match the themes at all of this album whatsoever. You got all this stuff about all these social issues, all this stuff. With Consent is just about being dominated. That's it. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. It's a fun song. I don't care. It's a lot of fun.
I find it interesting that you looked into the lyrics of this album because I did too, and it's weird because I'm not usually the type of music listener that cares about lyrics too much, but something compelled me to look into this one, right? So I did, and I was like you, semi-disappointed with some of the stuff on there. Just for anybody that cares, this is like extreme left-wing political stuff through and through. If that's not something you like, then it might piss you off. Their last album was not like this,
no.
Lyrically. This band, if you look them up, they're supposed to be dark fantasy and monsters, is what their lyrical content is supposed to be. This album is not dark fantasy, it's not monsters, it's completely political driven. just because you mentioned With Consent and said it was different lyrically, it sounds like it, but I do feel like it's got a political undertone, and I think
It could.
I think it's about the whole slut shaming thing, because it's basically about, I'm giving you consent, treat me like however you want, I'll be your whore.
And you know what? That's interesting, and that's how you properly write a song. You know, that's a good way of writing lyrics. Like, you know, it makes you think. It might have a double meaning. It's actually thought-provoking that way.
Exactly.
A lot of the rest of lyrics are a little bit too direct. And I'm not saying you can't write about this kind of stuff. Absolutely can. You can write about anything. You know, there's no problems there. I just think it would be more interesting if there was more depth to it. And I bring up Of Kingdom and Crown because there was depth to that. You know, I feel like if it was more like that, I wouldn't have a problem.
Well, going back to more lyrics that you mentioned, just because I wrote notes and had thoughts about these lyrics too. So, Flower Children, we want the boomers dead, sorry ma. That, on the surface, sounds like a silly lyric. But I'm thinking about it in depth, and I'm like, this basically, the song is an anthem of a younger generation screaming at an older generation. Basically saying, you fuck things up so badly that we are suffering now. And the chorus is basically, we want all old people to die, even if that means my mother and father have to die.
Yeah.
We want all old people to die. Sorry, Ma, if that means you, oh well. That's pretty hardcore.
I like that concept of, you know, this younger generation being frustrated at this older one. I just feel like it could have been written in a more interesting manner.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's effective. But my favorite song lyrically, there's some songs that piss me off. Okay, there's some ACAB stuff in this album. I'm against the ACAB stuff. I think those people are fucking idiots. But it's on here, so that kind of pissed me off a little bit. But putting that aside, there's stuff on here that I actually liked. But Esther Weeps was a song lyrically that I thought was really good. Because the song's essentially, and this is interpretation, maybe other people thought differently. To me, the song is about a girl that gets raped. She gets pregnant by the rape, is forced to have the baby. And you get all these like conservative Christian men who are like, oh, you have to have the baby, you can't abort it because it's God's baby, God put that baby there, it's God's will and all this stuff. But the song is asking the question, where was God when Esther was raped? Where's God for Esther now? Because Esther is now a shell of her former self. Esther now has to live in constant mental torment, constant depression, constant regret for the rest of her life because she had to go through this tragic ordeal. She's now got this kid that she didn't want. You know, where's God for Esther?
God, where are you at?
Where are you at?
Where are you at, buddy?
So I like the fact that they're challenging that narrative. They're challenging that point. I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other things I thought were interesting on this album were the interludes, which is song number 3, Tipless, and song number 5, Seeing the Elephant. Now, one thing is, they both bookend Rosefire, so they're pretty close together, which I thought was odd. But the cool thing about these interludes is they have lyrics, which is something you don't see a lot of in music. Mostly interludes are just instrumentals. Mm-hmm. These actually have lyrics on them, which is kind of cool. Overall, listening to this album throughout the week, I felt like most of it was quite enjoyable, but I do think some of it was quite forgettable. There was a few songs that really stood out, and I was like, damn, these are good songs. And they're essentially the ones you listed already, like Tiny Disappointments and With Consent. Strongest part of the album by far. I think With Consent is the best song of the album. Rosefire is also a top song. We mentioned this in the first impressions.
That's a great one.
The rest of the songs, though, are good but not great. They kind of just have their place, do their thing, but don't stand out. I was never looking forward to any of these other songs, and I tried pretty much for all of them. Actually, Esther Weeps is also pretty good because I like the content of the song, and I think it's a well-written song. But the rest of the songs I'd put on kind of one by one to kind of analyze it, I guess, and think, does this song really speak to me? And a lot of them didn't. So, yeah, I don't know if I have a lot more to say. I think lyrically the album's divisive, but also thought-provoking.
At times.
Instrumentally, it's good. Okay, here's one thing I forgot to mention. Vocally, this album slays.
Oh, this guy killed it.
I don't know if there's more than one vocalist. I tried looking it up. There's only one guy credited.
Yeah, one guy.
And there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of backing vocals, a lot of harmony, there's a lot of doubled up things, a lot of range, some good screams, sustained screams. There's vibrato stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on. This guy really has some pipes. And I was impressed. Vocally, I think is probably one of the biggest highlights of this album is the vocals. Yeah. Straight up. Guitar solos are also really good, but none of them really, really got me that much. But they're all pretty wild and pretty like lots of wails and things like that.
Even so, I think every time a guitar solo comes on, it's a really good one.
It is
every time. You
it
know?
is.
One thing I want to mention about Rosefire, which I did love, that's another one of the songs I liked a lot. We mentioned, okay, this band sounds at times a lot like Slipknot. And Rosefire, the main riff of Rosefire, sounds like Gematria, the Killing Name, which is a Slipknot
There
song.
you go.
So it's like, when this song comes on, I'll sing Gematria on top of it. I'm like, yeah, this works perfectly. And when I listen to Home again, I'm like, wow, yeah, there's a few songs that sound like Slipknot songs on that record too. Like, there's a song that sounds like Psychosocial and a song that sounds like the negative one. So I just thought that was funny, the comparison that's there. But yeah, I also really like Rosefire. The 2 interludes are really cool. The big winner that came from these interludes is that they're seamless. Every time they came on, they came and went, and I didn't even realize there was an interlude.
Yeah.
And those are the best kind.
Yeah.
So it's like 2 tracks that just flow right through very, very nicely. Even on shuffle, I feel like they worked out really well.
Yeah.
Like, they flow in and out of Rosefire, but they don't do it in a way that feels abrupt or anything. So it works out there as well.
Okay, well, I think it's time to rate it. I'm just gonna say, just because you mentioned Home, I'm gonna mention Home as well. I think Home was a stronger album than this. I did go back and listen to it as well. I just enjoyed it a lot more for various reasons. This isn't bad at all. I did like this album quite a lot. However, having only about 3 or 4 out of 10 songs that really grasped me is probably gonna prevent it from getting a toe tag. It was really strong at the beginning of the week. I thought this was definitely a toe tag album, but as the week went on, I started kind of drifting away from certain songs and really gravitating towards other ones, which is not really the sign of a strong album for me. But it's still really good, well written, well performed. It's gonna get a 7 from me.
All right, well, in my case, like I said, my only real criticism was the lyrical content on this album. However, I will admit, throughout my experience through the week, I kind of got to a point where I was in a similar boat to yourself, where I started gravitating towards like a certain pocket of songs, and the rest I'm like, yeah, those are cool, those are good, but I like these ones. And the fact that divide exists is a little bit of an issue, but it's still really well performed, really well made, it's strong. I feel like Home might have an edge, but this album, while great and well performed, is just barely not gonna reach toe tag and get a 7.5 from myself.
I want to also add, sick album art, by the way.
Yeah, really nice looking art. I love the really cool color.
And also, just to mention this as well, is it's called Seeing the Elephant. I don't know if that means something, or if it's maybe a reference to the Republican Party of the United States, because their mascot is elephant. Just throwing out,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Because this is, like I said, this is extreme left-wing, I don't want to say propaganda, but it's extreme left-wing ideologies through and through, and I can see them being like, we see you motherfuckers. We see you motherfuckers, you Christians.
Well, a 7 from Vile Self and a 7.5 from myself, which are still pretty strong scores for this album. And that's all we got for you guys today. Remember to like the video if you liked it. Tell us in the comments below, what did you think of this album a week after its release? And subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
And I'm Vile Self.
We'll see you guys later.